Okay, so we're going to pick up the questions. Our memorial, I'll let you answer this, Morris. Our memorial fund has a separate account. It is not accounted for in our annual church budget. How do I report these bequests?
It gets back to what I was saying, that you need to go through and pick up all your income from all your funds, so that it ends up in the appropriate line, lines 14 through to 19. So if you've got a fund, you should be in fact, you should be reporting all funds, all financial statements in your annual report and picking those up. So you just need to make sure that you do pick it up and then report the expenditure on line 23. It sounds as though it's a scholarship, so it'll be 23.
Okay, now we have a question, and you might be best to answer. I'm not sure which one of you will answer this. The CRA question was about income replacement money, not a loan, now that they reassess it and want half of it back. And I think that's where does that get reported if the CRA is asking for income replacement money back?
I would say it probably goes on the same line as where you put the CEWS or whatever it was in the first place. So you're just repaying that. It wouldn't be treated as an expense. You're just giving back the money or reducing the funds.
Or I think it would be still like a loan. If you have to pay money back, you'd put it on your debt repayment. No, Lawrence is shaking his head. Okay.
I just put it on as a repayment. If they overpaid you for something, you just return it back to them.
Okay, return it back. Good. That's why I've got real treasurers answering those questions. Let's go to the next one. I want to be clear. The only requests reported in 16 are ones used in current year. All of ours go into investments. So yes, if you, okay, so the only bequest money that gets reported in line 14 is any bequest money that has come in for use in the current year. Then you can take all of the bequest money that you're putting into investments and you can report that on line, is it line, the endowments, funds and bequests. At the end of an hour and a half, I begin to mix up all
16.
Say line 16. Yeah. So line 16 is for the ones that are going to be used in the future. So that's the one that have gone into investments. If we are a financial sponsor for a community project, so the funds are in and out, that is recorded on 19. That is correct. Yes. I like nice quick answers. We signed a contract for a new window requiring a 50% deposit. The total cost was more than 10% of our annual operating budget, but the window was delayed and was not installed until 2 years later. Anyway, do we get to deduct the total cost? So I would say the total cost was more than 10%. You do get to deduct the total cost. If it's spent over 2 years like this and half of it is less than 10%, send us a note so that we know and we don't make the adjustment. That's why we put that line. So it could be for a stained glass window, you could put the exclamation mark, stained glass window half paid in 2021 or something like that, or total value is $20,000, something that shows us that the whole value of that project is more than 10% of your normal operating funds. And then we'd let you leave it there. Okay, see if I can get this to go down without jumping. Okay. Oh, so somebody wanted to know that they are working on the 2021 stat report. And that it just, again, we're going to have the 21 stat report, both the PDF and the online form, ready for you quickly. I've seen from this, I've made a bunch of notes of things we're going to update and change. So that may just take us a couple of days and then you can go wild and fill them out. Okay, here's a question. What if you were paying out a severance? So I guess this maybe has to do with minister's accommodation or minister's stipend. What if you're doing a severance? Where do you put that?
Just sounds like an expense because you don't have
23.
a minister.
23, you don't have a minister, so put it as an expense, line 23. if in doubt. Okay, we received fund from our first country for a renovation of our building. How do I report that money and how do I report the spending from that fund? So I'm thinking you've received funds from your county for a renovation. So if the renovation is worth more than 10% of your regular operating funds, you can put the funds, if it's received in the current year, in line 18. Sorry, my papers, I've got to get
Yep.
organized. In line 18. So that's where your major renovations and repairs go. If it's for the future, so if you received, say, $5,000 and the renovation or repair is going to be $50,000, but it's not going to be done until a couple of years from now, then put it in line 16, which is the special funds for use in the future. Okay, what if the housing allowance being paid includes the phone, internet, electric, etc.?
You
You
have
need to
break
back
it
off
out.
your utilities.
Yeah.
And then put in the net amount as the housing allowance. So back off utilities, put them on line 21 B,
Utility.
and then the housing allowance would be reported on 11 C, and
And I
that's it.
think maybe it'll help people to understand that housing allowance for ministers is part of their stipend. So it's part of the salary that they're paid. But all of us, we're responsible for our own utilities. So we get paid a salary and we have utility expenses. We pay our own electricity, our heating, our internet, our phone, and that's sort of the expenses. But it's not part of our salary. So that's what you're thinking. The housing allowance is part of their salary and what you're paying. So that's why they have to be separated out. All right, so the continuing allowance, and Lawrence, you've already answered this, but I'm going to allow you to answer it in person again for people who can't see the chat. The continuing allowance, that is that the amount spent in 2021, or is it what was budgeted for in 2021?
Well, in my experience, continuing education is part of the call document. So it goes into a reserved fund. It's expensed every year, perhaps on the 1st of January, and is put into a reserve fund. Then any expenses that year come out of the reserve fund. So if you're budgeted for 600, it comes out on the 1st of January, put into the reserve fund, and that's where any draw is taken from. Then anything that carries over to the next year is allowed to carry up to a total of 5 years worth of both time and funding. So I hope that helps answer it. The budgeted should be the actual as far as the congregation goes.
Okay, great. So just a second, I just lost my place. Oops, I only had 10 questions left and now I lost where I was. Heather, do you know where I was time-wise?
Around 3:16. Here's a question. We had a break-in with no insurance claim. How do we report the expenses for replacing stolen items?
Just an expense.
Line 23.
Yeah, line 23 sounds good. So here's an example. We've got a 2-point charge. If the stipend and allowances are divided up, so each congregation only reports their portion, then a congregation that receives income from another point of the charge for the stipend and allowances, the receiving congregation doesn't have to report that as income.
Are you saying that there's one congregation is making the
Oh,
total
the payment.
payment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be right. So you want it to correspond with who's ever paying the expenses. So if it's corresponds with you're receiving the income and then you're paying the expenses, then that's, yeah. Okay, so we've gone to the break-in. I see where I am. I found my place again. Okay, so here, and this is a good question. I think I'm going to include it. Where do expenses for pulpit supply go? And I'm going to answer, I think that's line 23, right?
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll actually, Maggie, can you make a note? Let's put that as one of the examples on line 23, because I think people can get that confused. Honorarium, pulpit supplies, that can go on line 23. And that means your stated supply, which includes your mileage. That'll go on line 23 as well. Line 23, you mentioned HST rebate here. Could you please re-explain this? Yes.
Okay. Back in one of the earlier presentations, I did talk about the HST and the rebating of those rebates that you receive. It all depends on how you're doing the accounting for the transactions in the first place. I know in some congregations, they take the, I'm going to assume it's a 13% amount of HST that's payable. So if you buy goods for $100, you actually pay out $113. I know that in some congregations that are following the cash basis, that they expense the full $113. At a later stage in the year, they will go through and then make a claim for the rebatable amount. And that amount I would then put in as a credit against your expenses as a separate line on your financial statements. Other congregations, what they do, they get the $113, they expense $100 and charge it to the operations. They put the $13 on their balance sheet. And then at some point in time, they make a claim and they don't receive the full $13. So say they receive, I think it's about 80% of that. Then they would, whenever they receive the money, they would credit against the balance sheet that they have, the amount that they have set up. And then there's going to be a difference or a shortfall, and you would expense that difference, the shortfall, as a line on your operating statement as an expense, being totally HST. The third option gets kind of way complicated because you've got to do it on every transaction. You would take the $100, expense it, plus then you go through the calculation and say how much of this is the non-rebatable portion. And so you may come up with maybe $10 something. So it'll be $10 plus the $100 that gets expensed in your operating statement. And then you post the difference, the rebatable amount, onto your balance sheet. And then when you make your claim, the amount on the balance sheet should equal the amount that you're setting, that you're going to receive from the government coming back. But in all cases, I would say that the HST would not go on line 14 or in any of those other income lines. It all relates to expenses as a reduction of expenses and ends up on line 23.
I think if I could maybe help Morris, I think if I saw that question coming through, I think another way of looking at it is just to say it's an HST GST rebate. So everything above that line on the slide here is an expense. This thing is going against it. You're reducing your total expense. Maybe we could come up with another word for goes here, but I think that may have caused confusion, but this is reducing the amount in line 23.
Yeah, you just credit the amount that you receive back on your rebate against that. But again, it also depends on how you're doing your accounting in the first place for the HST.
Right.
And we also don't want to see it in your income. It's not really an income, it's a rebate. And so you don't want to increase your income because it really wasn't. It decreases your expenses.
Yep.
All right, so I think that I got that. Okay, and under 21, do you only put down what the main church pays out 50% when you are a 3-point charge? And this is for the stipend of the minister. And I think that question has been answered, that yes, you prorate it to whatever the church is supposed to do, and you include that on yours. You're prorated.
Against the congregations, and they'll all have a share on their line 21s.
Yeah, exactly. If we were to add up the line 21 of all three, we would want to see the total stipend that was paid for that minister.
And Karen, if I can interject in terms of stipend, because multiple churches are identified within the stat form. So the stipend does appear according to each congregation.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I think we've answered the HST/GST. Oh, just a reminder to people that in line 26B1, presbytery dues, synod dues are not included in the contributions for other mission to the PCC. They're included under your other expenses, line 23. They're not another mission. They're a very, very specific type of contribution that you've made towards your presbytery and synod expenses. So here we go. Sometimes members of the congregation contribute directly to the PCC in the name of the church, and this is included in the financial total. Do we include that as well, or only what the treasurer submits? Okay, this is a little bit, I let you include if an individual has given directly to us and we have included that amount on your congregational remittance form. You don't get to include it for the CRA. The CRA is not interested in that, doesn't matter to them. But for our purposes, you can include that in your contributions to other mission. Actually, is that right? That maybe is wrong, because you haven't included the income. If you included the income in line 14, you would.
Mhm.
That said, Maggie, do we include it? We include it in the acts and proceedings, right?
You mean the money that goes,
The gifts from other individuals.
that is reported in line 26.
Yeah, so yeah, it's your bonus. That's your bonus. If an individual is given to us directly, you get a little bit of a bonus there, and you can have your dollar base reduced a little bit.
Can I comment on that, Karen? I think if you took the two situations, so I give $1,000 to my own congregation for Presbyterian sharing. It
Yeah.
comes in line 14 and goes out in line 26.
Yeah.
If I send it to the national church, you're saying I can take it out on line 26, but I haven't included it on line 24. So I'm not sure that's right.
It's actually not right, but our system, the database system we have doesn't, well, I don't know. We're gonna look into that. To be continued. But I can tell you the past couple of years, it has been included. It's really not that much money, but it could be in the future. So I want you to encourage members of your church to give us large donations, and we'll see. Okay, so here we go. Perhaps the deadline for the remittance should be extended by another week, say the 3rd week of January. I would love to extend the remittance deadline to you. That is a deadline that has been given to us by our auditors. We get 10 business days before we close our books. I would love to extend it. The only way we could extend it, which, I think I would love, I don't know, has pluses and minuses. The United Church does it where their year runs from March, I think, to March instead of January to January, but that's a big change for the church. So unfortunately, I cannot extend the deadline, the remittance deadline for you. Okay, where does the PWS&D expense? PWS&D doesn't go with Presbyterian sharing, it goes other mission to the PCC. So you've got Presbyterian sharing is distinct, and then PWS&D and all other gifts. So sometimes it's PWS&D, sometimes it's international ministries, Canadian ministries. If you read the guide, it's really clear. Yeah, can you go back one more there, Jim? One more. Okay, so you can see, yep, okay, go back there. You can see there's the Presbyterian sharing, the year to date, that's gonna go on 26A. 26B is gonna be add together the PWS&D with PCC other mission. Add them together. Just go back there now so that you can actually see the online question, Jim. So go back 2 or 3 slides. Oh, never mind. Okay, does pension payment?
26B1.
Yeah, send 26B1. There we go. You can see remitted to Presbyterian sharing, remitted to PCC other than Presbyterian sharing. And that's PWS&D, gifts of change, international ministries, Canadian ministries, not presbytery or synod assessments, should say assessments. Okay, does the pension PCC payments, where do they go? Is that part of stipend or is that part of
23.
23? It's line 23. Okay. There's a Larry had the comment that synod, presbytery, assessment dues, and pension payments are all just expenses. Yeah. All right. Our church provides a post-secondary school scholarship to a deserving student. Where would that expense be entered? That would be entered on line 23.
Yep.
We are vacant. Do we still have to pay health and dental assessment? I'm going to say, look, refer to the webinar last week or 2 weeks ago. But it was answered, so there we go. Okay, once everything is submitted, if there's discrepancies, errors, or concerns raised, will someone review with the treasurer? The intent is to learn. We try to do that. We try to learn. So we try to review, but there's often too many for us to review one-on-one. But if you have a question and you see that something has been done, phone us up, email us, say, I want to review this with us. We're always happy to take our time to do it. But sometimes it's hard for us to proactively get to everyone when the change has been made, but we try to. So know that the intent is there and it's just a matter of sort of reality. If you haven't heard from us, give us a call. Call Jackie. She can't answer you. She'll direct you to where you'll get the answer.
Or perhaps your presbytery treasurer.
Yeah, your presbytery treasurer. Absolutely, yes. Oh, I'm going to do that. Phone them first. If we receive, come on, Morris. If we received $500 to put towards a future renovation, would have included line 18? Yes. And future is anything that's not in this current year. Okay, I have answered some of these. I think we're getting close to the end. 12 new messages. Why do these keep coming? Okay, I've done that. PWS. Oh, wait, it's going. These have been answered. Review 500, yeah. Oh gosh, here's one. We issue tax receipts for auction items. Do you include the total value versus the actual money received? You should, yes, you receive the total value of the money received, not the value of the auction item, but the money received, that's part of your income. The same way that you include the total value of something that is put in a donation envelope or a PAR. So yeah, that's fine. It doesn't have to line up with the receipts. That's why I'm like, it doesn't always line up perfectly with what you're submitting to the CRA.
You know, there's also a CRA webinar that was shown in November, December. If you want to go back and check it, they get into a great lot of detail in what you receipt and how you calculate the amount that you are receiving, because people are receiving maybe goods and you've got to deduct the cost of the goods that you're receiving. So there is a CRA webinar back in November, December that you may want to look at as well.
I heard great caution with these sort of things because they've been used as scams, and the CRA is very aware of it. Let me give to you a bottle, a jug of wine, case of wine, and it's worth $10,000. Give me a tax receipt, please. They're very, very sensitive to this.
Yeah. Okay, here's one. If a church has one bank account, including operating and reserve funds, and if part, example, $10,000 of the reserve fund is used to pay for some capital expenditure, example, $10,000, then can the church put down $10,000 as a drawdown from the reserve fund in the current income part of the monthly finance statement for the church? So in terms of the statistical report, it depends what this is going for. If the money coming from the reserve fund, $10,000, is paying for your normal operating expenses, it goes into line 14. If it's going for a capital expenditure that is more than 10% of your normal operating expenses, it can go in line 18. So that's a question for the statistical report. I don't know if you were asking a question, just an accounting question for that. I think we're at 4 o'clock and I am going to wrap this up. We will look at the remaining questions and I will try and include them in the Q&A document. The Q&A document, I am trying to run the answers by the treasurers, so it's taking a bit to compile it together, and we're including the ones from last week or 2 weeks ago as well. So we will try to get your answers and to your questions that are in there. And if there's, let anybody, Grace, if anyone's allowed to unmute themselves, if anybody has a really urgent question that they want to ask vocally, even if they've already asked it in the chat, we'll let them do that now. And otherwise, we're going to let people go and wrap up for today. So thank you very much. I can't believe so many stayed right till the end. Somebody said we missed the questions about where honorariums go. Honorariums go into line 23, stated with the stated supply. Any type of honorarium you're providing is line 23. So really, that's what Morris was saying. Really, your accommodation, your stipend is about your regular staff. Okay, so thank you for participating. We'll try to get you, we'll review the questions and get answers out as soon as we can. We'll also get the revised forms out as soon as we can. Thank you very much for joining us once again.